All right, continuing with our stipulations discussion, we were on bare bones text, and Gavin, I had asked you to hold that thought along with you, Nelson. So, Gavin, pick it up.
Yeah, well, of course it is a separate thing, really, which is that what is the function of the story quest? And I'm with Chris on that. I was thinking that earlier, because it was causing confusion between the story quest and sort of epic quest arcs that are used. It's sort of separate, interlinked quest arcs. But the actual story quest itself, it's never felt... I don't even know to what extent it really has a place in an MMO. As I say, above and beyond teaching people the basics of how to get around in the game and what the sort of game it is. Because beyond that point, what is... You're essentially, like Nelson said earlier, playing a single-player game. It's single-player MMO play. If you really want it to be an MMO, then the single-player part of it, the storyline part, it can carry on throughout the game. It doesn't all have to be packed up at the beginning of it, but to introduce you to new parts of the planet, for instance. Mm-hmm. But above and beyond that, I don't really see that it has a place in an MMO as a central part of the game. You go out into the world and you do whatever quests you feel like. You take your character in the direction you want to take it in.
How about this? And I know this is actually really, really off topic, but I think it's important for this particular question. I mean, what do you guys think about completely doing away with one main super story arc doohickey thing, and just have interesting long quest chains that get the same treatment as what a huge epic journey would be? Because the fact is, Zach is spending a lot of time making a really cool, interesting environment that I think people would really like to play in. And I think that it would be instead of just being a huge, like a single player game where you have to get through this and that's the end of the game, or an MMO where this is kind of this weird thing that you just do sort of and blah, 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 turn it into something entirely different. Turn these quests into just activities. You know, they're just activities that open up, you know, depending on skill level or your location or whatever, and there'll be like, I don't know, 10 or 15 of these longer quest arcs that get this special treatment of, you know, well-written dialogue, if we could afford it, probably not, but voice acting.
It also obviates this whole problem with what happens when you fail an epic quest. Well, you go off and find one of the other epic quests.
Yeah, exactly. At this point, it doesn't really matter. But
for
see that
reference, the way I've said this before, the epic story, as it were, it wouldn't be one quest chain. It would be the end game. It would be when you reach the character's development, you've gone through all these long quest chains, and finding out what's going on in the world, and you know the big plot that's happening is the end game. It's all your PvP arenas.
See, but why does that have to be at the end?
To me, that's the end of the middle game at the very latest. I.e., that's the point at which you say, right, now I'm going out on my own in the world. I'm 21 and I'm going to drink in a bar. Damn it! I mean, that's what I was saying when I say, you know, above and beyond teaching someone how to play the game. What is the point of having a long, involved one big story that the
game does, there is no end to the game.
Exactly.
Yes, right. I know. I'm not saying there should be a defined end point of the game where all the plot is tied up, and basically once you reach that point, you can't go off and you know, do whatever the hell you like. You can at any point, the way I'm envisioning it, the way you can at any point go off into the wilderness and do whatever the hell you like, and completely ignore everything around you, if that's what you want to do. That could be from the start of the game, from the middle of the game, at the end game, between, because you know, in I don't know how it is in Eve, but in WoW, I do. You know, your character gets to the level cap. You go through the dungeons, you get all your gear, you go into the raids, which are very heavily into the plot of what's going on in that expansion. But your character doesn't stop being a blacksmith or, you know, an alchemist. You do still do the other things that your character can do. And in the MMO that you're designing, it seems that there is a lot more that your character can do in their quote unquote downtime from.
But this is the thing, to my mind,
take the
whole thing
downtime
that
and
makes
turn
it an MMO is the downtime.
Yeah.
If you take away all that stuff,
I'm not saying take it away.
No. If you push that to the background, what you're left with is a single player game.
But I'm not saying push it to the background. I'm not saying get rid of it.
But
you are.
Well, it kind of round this back into stipulations. I'm basically thinking of something like Oblivion, but without the main quest. Because you can at any point go out and do these sort of like kind of like little mini, like the different guilds and all that cool stuff. And I think that there is a place for single player style, story driven, dialogue driven, interesting, well written things within this universe. But having them be the forefront of the game, the driving factor of the game, like Gavin said, just doesn't really make much sense. And that to bring this again back to the bare bones text, nobody's going to read it anyway, so why do we even have it? Why don't we just instead take all the writing that would go into this huge epic quest that you have to complete in order to unlock additional areas and just make things like the Dark Brotherhood quest or the Mage Guild's quest, and you take all that good writing and put it into a place where people would actually care about its existence and then leave everything else as more or less bare bones text.
I don't know about Zach, but I certainly didn't envisage having one big main quest that you have to do to get from one area to the next, like it was a GTA or something like that.
But that's kind of what you're talking about. I
wasn't. I wasn't.
With
your character has a development cycle. It goes from the start of your character to where you are happy to take it, right? And amongst that, there is all sorts of quests you can do. You can build up however you want. You know, whatever layers upon layers and layers of quests you want, of whatever type you like. But this game will have a plot. Okay?
Does it have a plot or does it have an environment?
Yeah. I'm happy for a plot to introduce you to the game world, but then it sets you free to know enough to go out into the game world and make your decisions and play the rest of the game. That's right. To my mind. Otherwise, it seems you'd be better off playing a dedicated single player game where all of the effort has been put into this big central.
But there's not one big central plot chain quest. There's lots of little ones. You get hints, you get ideas. It all comes together into these big end game group.
There is no end game. The game doesn't end. It's not a.
No, the game doesn't end. You're missing the point entirely.
I really am. I'm trying to understand what you're saying, but it doesn't make any sense to me.
Right, there comes a point in a character's development where you stop doing things like getting people milk, and you stop doing things like going and murdering people, and you go, don't ever stop doing that in these games. Well, no, but you get to a point where your character wants to do something, or at least I do in all these sorts of games. Mm-hmm. I want my character to do something. I want my character to go and
start a city, do whatever. But why should that be dependent on any sort of quest?
Yeah,
I'm not saying it should be. I'm just saying that there's no reason.
Then we're great with each other.
I
seem to want to completely remove the element of a big storyline that the player can get involved in.
No. I'm saying replace that with a big environment
that the player can get involved in. The mobster.
There's no reason you can't have both. There's no reason you cannot have both.
Yeah, but I don't.
Everybody has already said this multiple times that nobody is going to read this text, and that's why there's a bullet point sitting right there saying that why don't we just get rid of all that stuff? So my point is just don't have something nobody cares about, but take all the effort.
Continue.
All the effort that would go.
I certainly wouldn't play. I certainly wouldn't play an MMO myself that didn't have some sort of.
Why not? The MMOs that
I wouldn't though. I wouldn't enjoy. I wouldn't enjoy it. I don't.
No. Some
I don't
sort of
see
what?
an engaging.
Chris, am I muted? Oh,
No.
No, I can hear you. I'm
Something-
just trying to think of
He's
the
just
right.
trying to get his point out. Look, I'm going to throw this out real quick. Even in World of Warcraft, there's not just one sweeping arcish story which dominates the entire scape of gameplay. There are several branching stories which they all kind of tie together. It turns out some of the big stuff that's going on kind of affects everybody. But I mean, go play through Cataclysm. For those of you who aren't WoW people, every single zone of Cataclysm has its own unique story, which some parts of it may generally tie into the fact that a great big fire-breathing dragon busted up out of the ground and tore pretty much everything we know to pieces. But then other parts of it have nothing to do with that at all. I mean, sometimes you're literally chasing an Indiana Jones clone around, doing anything he tells you to do. And they don't necessarily need to be linked to each other. My point is that, for better or for worse, there is kind of a nice, pleasant market, a nice, pleasant experience to be had in putting in some quests that do have an ongoing story for as long as that needs to take. It doesn't need to run the gamut of the entire game by any means. It could just be maybe half a dozen quests, or maybe 24. You know, just a small branch of stuff that somebody could sit down when they don't happen to have their friends around and they don't want to go, I don't know, chisel on rocks or I don't know, dig roots out of the ground, whatever other professions we end up putting into the game. They don't want to do that. They want something moderately engaging. They want somebody to tell them what to do for 5 minutes so they can run around, develop their character, maybe make a little bit of money here and there, maybe get a couple of new pieces of gear, maybe, I don't know, maybe just see some other NPC tell a random joke while they're in the middle of a quest. I don't know. They have their motivations, but I can say this. I have on many occasions, and I consider myself a fairly good MMO gamer. I'm not, like hardcore, super ultra mega into playing 24/7, but I have more than once sat down to various MMOs and thought to myself, I just want to run some quests tonight. I don't want to jump into a dungeon with a whole bunch of people. I don't want to get out on a battleground. I don't want to go mine for this or dig for that or complete any of these other things. I just want to grab a good old-fashioned quest or two and go run around, bang on things with my shovel, and have somebody give me some money for it. I think there's a really strong argument for having that available. And yes, that can be, well, why don't you just use all of the fruit gathering quest from our field workers, because that's the one thing I think our game's going to have a lot of is field workers. We need a lot of them. But there has always, to me, been something very nice about seeing a good collection of quests that are tied together by a single story. Now, in each of your individual minds, everybody on this call, if you're picturing that as one great big highway that literally starts with the birth of your character into this world and goes all the way to the point where they're sitting at the shore of the universe going, what the hell do I do now? Then that's fine. I kind of pictured it more along the lines of a whole bunch of individual tied-up packages that you find along the way. Each one tells a different story. Sure, some of them are related, some of them aren't. I never once thought of, even when I was using the term epic arc, which I did quite a lot, I use that in the sense of that is the main series of quests that somebody would go through to get the gist of the entire story of what's going on in this particular universe for this expansion of our game, and that is it, and that is all.
Well,
that's exactly what point I was trying to make.
But hold on. But I still have. I mean, although that gets really close into what I was saying, I still think might be a little bit of room of improvement on that, where we only have bare bones text for the vast majority of quests, but we take all the effort that would go into the unread quest items, and we flesh out really nice story arcs that people can go on with friends or individually, like you were saying, like something like the Dark Brotherhood. Because when take Rift for example.
Oh, and by the way, for anybody out there who's listening to this video, I may be one of several people who actually gets the Dark Brotherhood reference. That's what happens in Oblivion when you get turned into a vampire. No, that's not. That's when you're an assassin.
Yes.
You're an assassin, but you can become a vampire at the end of it.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd mention that. If it was, why does he keep mentioning the Dark Brotherhood? I just thought I'd let everybody know.
But yeah, what I'm saying though is that what was I saying? I was saying craft these really interesting story quests that people can go on, because ultimately, if nobody's going to read, Rift. I was going to talk about Rift. I remember a few instances where you go, like for example, when we go into that burning village, and then there's a few like related quests that we all do. You know, like go grab the people, go do that stuff. None of us read any of that. I mean, at least I didn't, and I don't think anybody else did.
Well, you were too busy dragging me through it because I got there late. I remember that place, and I was like, I think I was about like 5 levels lower than you guys, and so I just kept dying and having to come back again.
But my point is that quest, they wasted a lot of effort, I think, in something that a lot of people don't really care about.
I disagree. I think they maintained the level of quality that was needed for their quest presentation. We're already going to end up in a situation where players are going to be able to generate quests, and I refuse, yes, folks, I refuse to allow players the opportunity to put flavor text on their quests.
Yeah.
You can't do that. I was apprehensive enough about people allowing to leave feedback, but I thought I'd throw the option out there just to see how people felt about it. But as soon as you let somebody type their own quest description, I mean, Jason just chuckled at the very thought. So I mean, I'm sure we'd have some great quests that you'd sign up for real quick.
Just between us lot.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't have that. So, you know, your player-to-player quests, they're not going to have much by way of text. Your algorithmically generated quests are not necessarily going to need a whole lot of text. They may need none at all. So what you're suggesting, Nelson, is already going to kind of happen just based on the nature of the beast. The quests that are going to be story-based, the quests that the designers are going to have to come up with and have to make sense by putting them into some sort of progression of chains, are going to require some sort of flavor text. And I'd rather that not be something too hideously generic. So they're going to need to have some text.
Yeah,
there.
just a little bit.
Yeah,
just a little bit. Like I said, the boss slept with wife. Go kill him. I mean, that's the extent that I was talking about as far as flavor text for those kind of quests. The kind of quests that
I'm hoping it's a little more verbose than that,
just
slightly. Just so we're not talking like somebody
more
with
elegant.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about these are the kind. There's two kinds of quests that I think could happen in the game besides the algorithmic.
The Mongoloid quest giver.
Besides the algorithmically generated quests and the player-given quests, the other two types are the ones you're going to be running through with a party of friends, and the ones that you're going to play just to experience the world some more, like what you said when you woke up one day and decided that you wanted to go play some quests.
Sure.
I think if we can get a good distinction between those two kinds of quests, we can put more effort into the ones that actually have an interesting story and less effort into the ones that nobody's going to care about anyway.
Yeah, but that's the thing, man. I don't think that you are qualified, or I am qualified, or anybody is really qualified to make a judgment call as to what anybody is going to find important at any given time. All we can do is the best we can to maintain some sort of consistent level of quality across those quests where we do have some written text, just so that we're not, so we don't accidentally get caught up in a situation where somebody really is moving the damn fruit baskets because some field worker told them to. And they're like, man, look at this, man. They wrote the worst quest description in the world. They obviously weren't paying attention here because he says, move basket, make happy, because he's another Mongoloid quest giver.
Well, hold on. I do want to throw
We've got to have Mongoloid quest givers in the game now because I love it.
I do want to throw one thing more
Wife
out
cheating, kill boyfriend.
Kill boyfriend.
I do want to point another thing. Hold on.
So essentially, we all agree on this.
I think
no. I think there's something that I wanted to say that I completely forgot about what I was going to say. What was the first thing that you said in your tirade, Zach?
Oh my goodness gracious!
I have no idea, man. Sorry, because really, the initial thing that just came to mind was which tirade. There've been a few.
Yeah. Okay, this is what I don't think that quests that are required for your progression should have a lot of effort put into them. I think that the quests that should have a lot of effort put onto them should be auxiliary secondary quests that you can do whenever you want, and that they change depending on your current skill set and level in some sort of way. And what I mean by that is that, or why I want that to be, is because the kinds of quests that parties are going to go out and do together are the kinds of quests that level up their characters, the kind of grinding quests. The kinds of quests that people might want to do themselves in a single-player environment are the kinds of quests that they can go back to when they're bored and all their friends are away.
So just so I completely understand what you just said, the quests that only a percentage of our user base are going to touch should get all of our actual sincere focus, while the quests that everybody's going to need to see are the ones that we should just kind of half-ass?
It's not about half-ass. It's about the effort you put into the dialogue.
I was going to say, yeah, it's a question of where you put the story almost, or where you put the exposition. You place it. I'm kind of with Nelson if you took that as the paradigm, because if you've got a group of humans
over all of the quests,
then you're going to be.
I'm not with Nelson because I think it boils down to actually trying to make this assumption of the player as to what they are and are not going to find important. If you're having a quest that has any kind of story to it whatsoever, do the best that you can do to make sure that that story is presented well and presented smoothly.
No, I agree.
And some people will find certain, like some stories more important or more interesting than others. You know, your Dark Brotherhood. Ooh, you're a murdering assassin who sneaks around at night in these very cool clandestine sort of environments, and eventually you turn into a vampire. Some people are just gonna love that, no matter what you're doing. When everybody else has just got the wife cheating, killed boyfriend. Some people will love that because the Mongoloid gets to talk to them some more.
Well, I think the key thing there is that Nelson was saying just then is that if this, say you've got you and if all of us get together and go to play the game and go and do a dungeon, that isn't a good place to have the walls tell the story of the history of this land, because you've got your mates, you're having a laugh with them, you're talking to them, you're killing stuff. No, you haven't got if one of you stops to read what the things are. Whereas when you're on your own and you everyone else is asleep and you're playing the game on your own, that's the time when you're going to...
Sure,
I'm not just
to
talking
a point.
about dialogue, too. I'm also talking about things like contingencies, multiple endings, just amount of time that you put into that.
Yeah, I mean, up to a point, Gavin, I kind of sort of see where you're coming from, but I keep getting coming back to what is it in Warcraft, because that's got such a great story they present to you from so many angles. But I think it's Halls of Lightning, the one where you got a little dwarf guy at the very end, and he talks to the computer and he finds out where all the dwarfs actually came from and what happened to them.
Oh, yeah. No.
And I mean, that was such a great way to enlighten us as to this bit of history, and he's just trying desperately to find out what happened to his people, and this computer starts shutting down, and then all these alarms start going off, and it was a great way to expose
out of the laser beam.
Oh yeah, well, and the stupid things that keep pinging you that do nothing but irritate you. But I love that part of the story. Every time we've played that, as irritating as it is to go through it, for your 90th time, I still don't really mind.
It's only annoying because someone's always going to stand.
Somebody's standing in the wrong damn location every single time. But I always loved that they did have the guts to say, all right, well, those of you who did group up and dive into this dungeon, you're going to learn something new about the history behind this game that nobody else is going to learn. And that was cool.
But that took and I think that could be strategically placed throughout the game, but the problem is that's going to require so much more production time than dialogue, because then you have to talk about animations, you have to talk about even voice acting at that point.
Not necessarily. The whole thing could have been presented just as dialogue if they'd really wanted it to.
But at that point, would the group of people really go and read that? I mean, what you remember isn't dialogue.
Hang on, you and I are thinking of the term dialogue in two different ways. To say what you mean, what is dialogue to you?
Dialogue boxes that have an accept and cancel button.
Ah, okay, all right.
I was thinking dialogue as in spoken word.
Yeah, like sharing a dialogue. I didn't actually think we were meaning, walk up and hit a button to see text appear.
But this comes back to a sort of production cost issue again, because that requires then voice acting. So that immediately limits the extent to which...
Not necessarily, is what I'm...
Well, not necessarily.
What I'm saying.
But
But that's my.
Yeah.
That's what
I mean, you could do floating word bubbles next to the guy's head while he stomps back and forth, and you'd still get the point across. Sure, you'd have your bulk of players that'd be like, my bubble, I just want to start the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
bring me the Mongoloid.
But that's what he's saying. Yeah, you would.
There's the phase in.
How do you get out of that problem?
You don't. I'm sorry. At some point, you draw the line.
Yeah, that's cool, but just wanted you to say it.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure that was what you meant.
yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've hit on this one quite a bit. So we'll go ahead and bring the bare bones text to a close. And right now, I say we can just put it in as a simple option to show objectives only, and we can just play with
fast
it.
track option.
Yeah, exactly.
TLDR.
But it's something we can just experiment with and go from there. But at over 25 minutes, we'll go ahead and wrap this video up. Thanks a lot, everyone.